Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. I am your humble host, Mr. David Knoll, also known as Hawkeye Two Feathers, and I greet you with the love and the honor of the infinite Creator. And I continue to pray that each and every day, each and every one of you will accept and receive the healings, the knowledge, the wisdom, and the blessings of the universe. Now, with that said, greetings, everyone, before and after. And this is Friday night. Actually, it's Saturday morning at 1:17. I'm a little late coming on, but I was sort of prompted by, you know, um, the ether to have a little discussion about this. And all y'all that are subscribers to my channel, blessings to all of you, your friends, and your family. And I mean that. There's some new subscribers, and I thank you for stopping by and having a listen. And when I'm live and you can, involved in the chat as well. Now, it's not a secret in the family that I have my sister um, had a husband who was black. Okay. And she had children by him. Okay. And so that makes them half black, half white. Well, in how the government looks at things, he ain't white. He's black. He's not mulatto. He's not a mix. He's black. So my nephew, who's been in trouble, and a lot of my family's been in trouble, including myself. And I got to admit, we're all trying to clean up our act over the years, and we've helped each other out in various ways. But this idea though that black men are stopped and they're harassed, and listen, white people can be stopped and harassed as well. One of the reasons why I left Tampa was because they were stopping me and harassing me all the time. Of course, now I had, you know, was driving around a vehicle that was easily to spot and easily to harass back in the old hippie days. So this idea of protesting, well, I've been a protester for a long, 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 long time, since the 60s. And, you know, at Tampa Catholic, I was on the debate team. We debated politics. It was part of our class history, our American history. And as it was going on, John F. Kennedy being shot, then Robert Kennedy, and then MLK, you know the drill. So it was very prevalent when I was going to school, especially as far as the Catholics were concerned and the Kennedys. But beside that, there was also very little prejudice at my school. There were, I don't know, there was I always thought a significant number of blacks, but, it was probably, much more white. But we had Hispanic folk. We had folks in Ybor City, Ybor, and we had folks from, the South Side. I lived on the North Side, so of German descent or whatever from the North, we were snowbirds, but there were people who were 2 and 3 generations of Floridians and Cuban Americans, um, you know, down in this, the Spanish side of town, man, Lisi's Bakery. And anyway, but the idea though that it was multicultural there in Tampa when I was growing up in the 60s. And there really wasn't a lot of fighting between. There really wasn't. But what there was, those people who would protest, it pissed off the police. That's what it did. And of course, if you go yelling at a pig, oh, you pig, blah, 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 we have rights and everything. And of course, the long hair was just pissing everybody off back in the day. But so with that said, though, to protest or not to protest, there were times when we protested where the cops just wanted to smack us because they just didn't like it. After all these years later, that is still a true fact, which is unbelievable in my way of thinking, is that we really should have moved beyond what's still going on. And back in the 20s and the 30s and the 40s and not so much the 50s, but the 50s with where there was race riots and blacks, and there were still lynchings going on, and there were black folk and white folk being killed alike during the civil rights movement, which in a lot of ways is still going on. So, but I've been held down in an ant bed with an officer with his knee against my neck and would not let me up. And I can understand it has nothing to do with being black, white, yellow, pink, or green. It has to do with the people who are in charge and who believe they have the authority to do whatever it is necessary. And in their mind, it's necessary to put their knee on your head and hold you down. I have been there, done that. I've had a 38 snub nose loaded with the hammer pulled back on my forehead. I can still see the little bullets in the front of that 38 special. Let me tell you. So they will do whatever they think necessary. And it's up to them to decide. Now, if you want to protest and you say, well, protest, we should protest. We should. But what is the other side going to think about this? Now, my sister, obviously, married a black man. I'm not sure if they were married, but at least they were cohabitating and whatever. And so my nephews are, half black, half white, but they look more black than white. So therefore, if they look more like me or her, then no. So they're automatically black, which has always pissed me off because, wait a minute, there should be, I'm sorry, I'm mixed. Latino, we're thinking, what about, when I filled out the census form? It asked me who I am. Well, I'm not mostly Anglo-Saxon. I am mostly over 50% Native American. So that's what I put down. What? Yeah, well, after looking through my history, it's like, wait a minute, I got 3 generations of grandmothers, great-grandmothers, and great-great-grandmothers who were full-blood Cherokee, and at least half-blood was my grandmother. So when you look at things, so it's like, well, wait a minute, am I an Indian more than anything else? So is my nephew, well, he's half and half, roughly, but he looks like a young black man. So he is a young black, well, I'm 60, I don't know, he's probably pushing 40 now himself, but anyway, 30s anyway, to the point. So he's been harassed. So my sister says, so how do you feel about this Black Lives Matter? And I always think it's all lives matter because I've been the white man with his head held down from, a GBI agent here in Florida on my own property. Helicopters flying over in the whole 9 yards. So I know what it feels like to be held down, manhandled, thrown up against the wall, the whole 9 yards. Spent a year in prison. So it's like, listen, I get it. But this idea of whether or not to protest and or to riot. Now, I am absolutely, along with my sister, she goes, well, they don't really have any right to riot, but you can see why they're pissed off. And I'm like, I'm pissed off, but I'm not. And if there were people who were like me, that were arrested for drugs and now they don't want to make drugs legal because then they would have to include us as well. Maybe we made a mistake, and so the drug charges against me could very well be dropped because in a way they were illegal to begin with. I was on my own property, wasn't selling to anybody, but I was in possession of it on my own property. So therefore I was arrested for having something on my own property that never left the property. They only found it with a helicopter. So wait a minute now. Hang on here. So I'm an old hippie that's been sought after for years by the GBI. They fly over with the helicopters. Still, they do. Of course, I'm nowhere near that anymore. But back in the day, yeah, I had some down in the woods, but it was never for sale. It was only for my own personal use. Still, now I'm not a black man, but I've been persecuted for the last 45 years, easily. Okay. And that's not, I've got a criminal record that goes back that far. So I'm not joking in that respect. But the idea, though, that what I do on my own property for my own consumption, now I can grow okra, nobody cares. I can grow corn, nobody cares. But one pot plant for my own particular medicinal use, I'm going to jail. So there are a lot of people who have been and put in jail for exactly that or less. Now, what a business that's been, right? So now what's this got to do with the Black Lives Matter? What about all of us? Doesn't matter what color we were. So, but what's got to do with it? Because we're still protesting after all these years, and still nothing is actually being done. Okay, marijuana is still a class 2 narcotic, right up there with heroin and everything. Bananas. I did a thing about shame on you, Virginia, and I got a few comments. And of course, I'm for states' rights. I wouldn't still be in the state of Georgia because the state of Georgia decriminalized an ounce of weed years ago. And thank goodness, because a lot of people, yes, they've had fines. Yes, they have to go through these things. Yes, they lose their driver's license for 6 months or whatever, have to go through a course, yada, yada, yada. And so the state makes you pay for it. But they don't throw you in jail, and it's not a felony. It is a charge. But to the point, though, so it's like, Florida, they were just throwing people in jail. Whoop, you got to join on your bye. It was as bad as 10 pounds of weed or cocaine. So with that said, though, so what's this got to do with Black Lives Matter? All lives matter, whatever I was now, I was never into, well, I take that back. At one particular time, I was into selling some really hard drugs, and I went to prison for that, and I should have. But it was, there were more people that I knew who were using it themselves. So when I bought an ounce of MDA, which is what I got busted with, everybody I knew back home was like, I was their supplier because they couldn't get the kind of, the pharmaceutical grade I was getting at the time. It was really good. But I was facing 20 years too. So it's like, was that worth it for a little bit of, snort? But Black Lives Matter. Yes. So in my argument with my sister, who was very forceful about her opinion because it's her sons. And I get it. It's my nephews. And she goes, now I was talking to your brothers. They're all half brothers. I have no true brothers and sisters. But that's okay. But, two of the brothers were like, them damn, they should be thrown in jail, and everybody, one of them should be, all them riders should be shot. And I'm like, they're more redneck than I am. And I live in South Georgia, and they live in Ohio. Trust me, there's some rednecks in Ohio. Good-minded folk now, but they're a little bit more vocal than the folks down here. They've learned to kind of like, yeah, we don't like that mess, but we're not going to get all up in a tither and everything because that, I'm a respectable farmer down here. And even though, anyway, but so do Black Lives Matter? Absolutely. Is this profiling anything? It's a shame. It's a sham. There are policemen who know my truck and they don't bother me because they know I'm an old hippie and my truck's got the grill all messed up because deer keep running in front of it. And yeah, I got kayaks and I'm always heading towards the river or something, but I'm not a threat. And so rather than driving around in flashy cars and being in places and stuff, what you do determines how you're seen in public. So if you're seen in public as a non-threat, then that's what you should do. So I have been a non-threat for many years. Learned it long time ago. Pay attention. the color of the vehicle. Like I've had a tan Mazda, and tan is just something they just like, oh, they don't look at. It's not a color that strikes the eye. And it's actually a beige, tan desert beige or something anyway. But with the studies that I did years ago on the colors of vehicles and stuff when I was in the industry, I was amazed. And I wanted a truck that would disappear when I went to the woods. And guess what? You can park my truck up there somewhere in the woods, and because of its color, it'll disappear. You can't really see it. And so it's like, that's what I want. I don't have to camouflage it because it already is simply by the color. Anyway, what's this got to do with Black Lives Matter? Should we protest? I think we should. But under the certain circumstances right now, the people who are protesting for the wrong reason. This guy got killed, and this is that, and this and that, and we have the right to riot, and we have the right. No, you don't. We have the right to voice our opinions. That is our protest. And we should be vocal with it. And we should tell people, listen, my nephews are half black. Does that sound right? Well, they're half Negro, they're, back in the day, slave owners, it took 3 black men to equal 1 white man. They were only worth a third. And some states it was different. I think South Carolina, there was a thing about that. But should we protest? And I say yes. But as long as there's going to be a riot involved, we have to say no. And we have to say no politely. Because my sister really wanted to, we need to be out there on the streets right now. And I'm going, calm down, sis. But it could be my son. Yes, and it could be my nephew. But let's calm down. But we have the right. We who? Well, I'm standing up for my son. And I'm like, yeah, but does he have the right to protest under these circumstances? Okay, what do you mean? And I said, I want to protest with you, but under the right circumstances. I don't want somebody in the group to be wanting to break windows or want to start a violence or a riot. Somebody's going to carry a gun or something. No. Somebody's going to carry a bat or a stick. No. If anything, let's carry a garbage can so we can use it as a shield, a garbage can lid, in the old days, But as far as wanting to create any kind of trouble, I'm not into any kind of name calling. Well, the policeman on the side of the road, well, them damn pigs. If you call people names, you're going to instigate a negative attitude. So if it's a positive protest and people want to get together and keep their voices down and discuss how important it is that the people who are in charge learn to restrain themselves and refrain themselves from any time of physical bodily harm like that because they think it's okay. And having been in jail and seeing guards take down different prisoners and so forth, the excessive amount of violence is very prevalent. That needs to be changed. But we don't do it by cussing at them. Trust me. You'll just get somebody will just piss somebody else off and you'll get smacked even harder in the head or leg or back or whatever they decide, whatever is close. And so, and they will plot against you over time. If they recognize you somewhere or know where you live kind of thing, they will drive by your place. They will check on you. And yes, they will harass you. And if they do, they might just think it's fun for the fun of it. Hey, see that brown Cadillac over there? Yeah, that's actually a doctor. But he's a young black man, and we're going to stop him. Now, I know of a certain incident about that, but down here in the South, you got to be doing something funky, okay? Now, the guys that are riding around with these cars with the spinning tire wheel thingies, and they got they're low riding and they're playing the juke, and you can hear them from 3 blocks away, and there's smoke coming out the windows, and they say, well, we have the right to do that. No, you don't. I'm sorry, but you're too obvious. You know, I mean, you're driving around and you'll be in South LA cool or something down here in these small towns. And small towns are small towns. So they think they can get away with it and that they should be able to get away with it. And that's like being stupidly arrogant and like, wait a minute, but I'm a black man. I have the right to, smoke my blunt down the street and with my car with the spinners and it. Hang on, my friends. Yes, you have the right, but then you turn around and say, but the cops keep stopping me. Well, duh. Look at what you're projecting to society. And you say to yourself, well, wait a minute now. Now, look, I think we all should have the right to do that within reason, right? So, but these folks who wish to push their why am I being stopped all the time? Look what you're doing. Look at your behavior. So, should we protest? I say yes, we should. We should protest the protesters who are turning violent and who think it's okay to be violent in order to get their message across. We should understand that is idiocy. That's as bad as it is as bad to be violent and rioting as it is for them to treat us, the protesters, in any way. I've been smacked in the head during a couple of protests back in the 60s and early 70s because the Vietnam War still wasn't over back in 1970, 71. We were still protesting the and 4 dead in Ohio. Oh yeah, So 10 soldiers and Nixon's coming. We're finally on our own. Yep. Crosby, Stills, and Nash. Anyway, but Kent State. But the idea, though, that was still very real, that college students were shot at and killed on a college campus. And a lot of people don't remember that. Some of us old timers, we do. Castle, Amanda, how are you? Jody, how are you? Good morning. Good morning. I just was up late and kind of bored, and the subject was on my mind. And so here I am dissertating. Greetings to you all and blessings. But my remembrance of the Kent State and, that kind of thing is very fresh in my mind because I experienced it, even though it was down here. But the protest that we did got our heads bashed in down in Tampa because the cops didn't like it. And they weren't going to allow that shit to happen in their town. Got to take a pause here and say, I noticed that the stream's jumping around. I haven't said thank you to Bob and offered coffee. Bob, we love you. But now I'm going to bring my point, my sister's point, more to this than mine. She was like, David, people just don't understand. There are a lot of us white women, or consequently white men, that have mulatto or half mixed black-white children who are automatically called black. Now, that it reminds me of what I've studied about slavery and history, and people think I'm a Dutz, and I didn't do my homework when I discussed Robert E. Lee. Robert E. really wasn't into the slavery thing. He really wasn't. The slaves he had were his wife's, given to him by her grandfather, General Washington. So it's like, well, then you better take down Washington's thing because he had slaves and he gave them to his granddaughter who married Robert E. Lee. So anyway, should we be partisan about these things? So should we protest these things? Yeah, but we got to be smart about this. What are we protesting? Are we protesting the death of the man? No. We are protesting the fact that they used unnecessary violence which resulted in the death of that guy. There's a lot of people who have been killed or, quote, accidentally, he got suffocated in the struggle. He had too many drugs in his system. I've seen it, okay, firsthand. It being in prison and around. Hello, Michelle. How are you? So this idea, it should not be about the guy who died. It should be about the fact that the police are still killing people of all colors, shapes, sizes. Women during one of the protests, it was a couple of days after the initial incident, and there was a white woman, and a cop had his knee on her face on the sidewalk like this with his knee. And I'm like, I'm sorry. Even if she got in a couple of good hits, she ain't going nowhere. But he had to force her on the ground with his knee on her face. And I think that any policeman who does that under any circumstances, I'm sorry, you don't have to do that to a person. It hurts. That's why they do it. You got them down. You're on your chest. They've got their knee in your back, and they've got both arms pulled behind you. And trust me, they yank your arms out of your sockets when they do it. I've been there. So in doing this, and the fact that they've got you down, and they're if you're still struggling, it's because you're in pain or you can't breathe, and you're trying to stop it, let me up, and that just pisses them off even more, which is a shame. That's what happened to me. I'm like, dude, I'm not gonna fight you. Let me up. I can't breathe, and I'm in an ant bed. I literally was. It was so funny watching him stripping in the middle of a briar patch to get them ants off of him. That tickled me. I got a little bit of pleasure, sadistic pleasure, I guess, out of that when they arrested me here. But anyway, I think we should protest. But we should protest the protesters. I want to tell my sister, calm down. Well, I want to rush out there right now. No, you don't, because everybody's at a fever pitch. You're at a fever pitch. Well, it could be my sons. Yes, it could. It could have been me. It could be anybody's son or daughter who gets caught in a situation where the people who are in charge, and that's the problem. We have control. You will do what I say. And any kind of deviation from that will cause adverse effects on you. So it's not about the man dying. That's the cause. That's the effect. The cause of the event is what's more important. The fact that they're using too much violence. They're using too much deadly force in a situation that is not deadly. If the person had a gun or a knife and they were trying to blow people up, take them down. But a person on the street that's doing a thing, and there is no need. It's unnecessary. Even if the guy ran a block or something, with all the technology and stuff, they know they're going to get him. And a lady of about 25, maybe 30, with her face, even she was a pissed off woman. So, okay. I know a lot of pissed off women. So, but you're going to hold her head down with your knee on the pavement while you're handcuffing her, and she's screaming, "Let me up," and he's like doing it even worse. That's not necessary. And they got that on tape. So that cop should be fired. And anybody who around him during that, and should we videotape some of these things? I say yes. But we should be polite and go, this is just for public record, and say nothing else. I'm videotaping this for public record. And the cops are like, what are you doing that for? Public record. That's all you got to say. And should we? Yes. Now, should we get involved? If somebody, for example, if you see that there's a cop, all those people standing around watching that poor guy die, somebody should have clobbered that cop. Okay. because I don't think anybody in their right mind, with all the cameras going on, would have said, hey, arrest this guy. Now, if he'd have, went on to beating him or whatever, but if he'd have pushed that cop off and said, hey, that's not necessary, which is what we don't become as violent as them, but we can go, hey, stop what you're doing. Stop. That's not necessary. You got him, calm down. Any of us should do that. But if we go on with fists flying, you're going to end up back in a fight. Should we protest? Yes. We should protest to the protesters. If there's a protester standing in front of a cop trying to intimidate him, you go up and you go, that's not necessary. Well, I got the right. You got the right to voice your opinion. But if you're going to voice it to that person who's a cop, if you're going to do that and try to humiliate or degrade this other human being and be disrespectful, you need to get your face smacked, because I might just smack you because you're being disrespectful. It has nothing to do with your protest. So you want to protest? Then protest what's wrong. Protest too much violence. But at the same time, you don't have to piss off the people who are the oppressors. It's stupid. You don't like something? I don't like that behavior right there. I think we should protest and allow our feelings to come out and say, I've seen too many policemen who were too rough. It wasn't necessary. I mean, I had a deputy sheriff pick me up from a cot and throw me into the back of the police car and dislocated my shoulder. And when I tried recompense about it, they were like, well, he was just doing his job. He could have asked me. I would have got in the back of the car. He didn't have to throw me. But it's a long story. But have I been roughed up? Oh, hell yeah. And then the cop's like, well, here you are, buddy, and drives off. My shoulder's dislocated. He's injured my back again. And but he drives off, and he's not held responsible for his actions of the bodily harm he did to me, because he was working as a sheriff's deputy. And so they can do whatever they feel is necessary. So when I brought his badge number up and everything to the sheriff, he was like, well, son, you were in the hospital and they were taking you to Southwestern because you were crazy. Well, listen, if I was crazy, why did he unhandcuff me out in the parking lot with only one attendant at 4:00 in the morning? If I was such a threat, he turned me loose in a parking lot with one attendant and drove off. So the 10-minute drive from the hospital to the hospital, you mean he couldn't have asked me to get in the car instead of throwing me in and manhandling me that? What's the deal? What's the deal? No one was held responsible. Nobody, because everybody was covered by everybody else. And I'm like, what? What about my shoulder that I still have trouble with after all these years? What about the increased injury to my back and neck? I got 3 operations that I was at your hospital with. And it was your attendance that... You want to protest? Yeah. There's a lot of things to protest. And it's the arrogance of the people in charge who feel they have the right to do whatever it takes. I've been a victim. I ain't black. I'm more Cherokee than anything, but I ain't black. But I happen to have 2 nephews who are. And my several of my friends, my friend Marcia, her sister, I bring her up too much, but her sister has her nieces. She has 2 nieces who are mulatto half, but they're black. And, so now they're female, which is a less, and they act more, I don't know, down to earth. They're not like, one is, the other one, anyway. But to the point, though, those genes go down the line. So even though one of them married a white man, their children still came out looking more black. So even though the gene pool doesn't say that that's how she should have come out, beautiful girls now, don't get me wrong, and we've all had issues with our personality, but they're straightening it out over years, and they come to visit their Aunt Martha, and and so hey, but the idea though that that there are a lot of white people who have black in the family somewhere. They might not want to admit it. Would my two brothers really want to stand up for their nephew because of his skin color? Well, I'm not speaking for them now, but if they're that pissed off, they're probably pissed off at the fact that she slept with a black man. We'll just leave it at that. But that's in my family, okay? I don't have to talk about anybody else. There's plenty of shit going on in my family. But it brings up another point and brings up somebody else's opinion. And my sister, she was like, but wait a minute now. He gets stopped for nothing. And she goes, yeah, he's going to have a little weed on him, Dave. But every time they stop him, so they're constantly on him, and it's like, so how do you win this one? I guess you don't drive around with weed on you or something, and you change cars, change your behavior. But you see, some of them folk have this attitude, and I had to change it as a hippie. Well, I'm a hippie. I can do what I want, and I can drive around. Yeah, and they're going to hunt you down and harass the crap out of you and arrest you every chance they get. That's one of the reasons why I left Tampa. They had my number no matter where I went. They knew who I was. Even though I wasn't like creating a stink, I was at different places and my car was obvious. You could not mistake it. And so it's like, and having been in the hippie places and the Tampa Jams and down in Rowlett Park and down on the thing and here and there, out on campus, my car was seen in all kinds of places. So certain cops really like to pick on me. I'm a white guy, but they still targeted me. So it's not about the color of the skin. It is still about their choice of how they wish to use their arrogance and their power. Yes. Do they pick on black people, black men, black ladies? Yes. Even around here, but these guys are like really kind of shoving it in the cops' faces. And I mean, if I can see it, and I'm not a cop, if I was patrolling in the same area all the time, I'd know what shit was going on. I drove around just a little bit what I did in town and could pick out certain things and went, ooh, that's a thing. Ooh, that guy, he's been driving around and and if you're in the neighborhood, when I grew up in Tampa, in the neighborhoods, the cops that saw us in the neighborhoods when we were growing up and learning how to drive, they had our numbers. This one guy chased me down and he said, listen, do you want me to tell your parents what you just did? We were jumping the railroad tracks. It was a lot of fun. And he was sitting on the other side waiting on us. Anyway, but he knew us, but instead of arresting us, he talked to us and said, if I catch you doing that again, y'all are in trouble. This guy, that guy, and him, I got you, every one of you, and I know where you live. We were a lot better after that. But he didn't try to beat us up, but he talked to us and said, I got you. And we avoided him. And, so all cops aren't bad, but if you piss them off and if you continue to do so with your protest, I have the right to go up to a cop and tell him how violent he might not be the violent one, but you piss him off, he's going to club you. So protest violence in general. We need to take the violence out of this. Now, is it true that there are some people who are on crack and the PCP? Oh, somebody on PCP, you need to put a net over them. But you see, we're beyond the space age in a way, We should have technology now that can take a person that is violent like that and like ding, bloop, and drop them for 5 minutes without harm, okay? Versus beating them up, manhandle them to the ground, bruising, beating them, or like me, dislocating my shoulder and throwing my back out, which was already bad, and with no regard. So, okay, you're not going to cooperate, patink, All right, and put you in the car, and we're going to take care of you, and then we'll sort it out later on. That you might say, well, wait a minute. Would you rather be beat up? Mm-hmm. Or would you rather have a little trank gun like, you know, and you go to sleep? Now, I was I bring this up because I was watching the old like 1930s version of the Green Hornet, and he's driving around with Kato, right? Well, he's got this gun. They both have guns, but the bullets they shoot don't kill. It just knocks them out and tranks them. What? So in the 1930s, there were people who had this idea. It's almost 100 years later. Okay. Now, if we can have Dick Tracy wristwatches, which we do, why can't we have the police have trank guns instead of bullets? What? I'm sure they could design something. Instead, they carry high velocity, bullets that will penetrate and this and that and the other thing. Holy shit. But nothing about maybe like rubber bullets on protesters. They used to use them. They don't anymore. Oh, they use tear gas. Remember a few years ago in Missouri when they had that black incident thing in the, south of St. Louis? I can't remember the town now. But they were using sound weapons on them, you know? So it's like, are they using the 5G to instigate some of these riots? Are they like tuning the pitch to a point where these people, this is a hypothesis, right? Where these people are may have started out as a simple protest, are now being bombarded with 5G or whatever to instigate and stir up their emotions. So they're already pissed off. But now, Ferguson, thank you, David Castle. It's a blessing. I wish we could sit down and have coffee someday. Seriously, all y'all. But speaking of coffee, let's thank Bob. And I know it's been glitching. But here's to you, friends. So, yeah, in Ferguson. So, but the idea, though, that we still have to use brute force, to me, in this day and age, is just not acceptable. It is not acceptable. So that's what we should be protesting, but we should do it in such a way they don't kick our ass. We got to be smart about this, but the people who are protesting, I don't think are using their noggin. They're being instigated, from the bottom up and stirred up with these emotions and the killing and the murder and the thing. People in Paris, France, for God's sakes, are pissed off about this. What? Now, I gotta say, I think that's a little weird. Other countries, other cities around the planet are all about this black guy being murdered. What about the violence that's being partaken with the people in the protests and the riots? These people are getting beat up, smacked up, and otherwise, and businesses and so forth. It's just pissing more people off, right? That's not a way. So, can we protest without all these shenanigans? We can. We could. But there's always going to be them weirdos on the fringes. They're going to want to start voicing, F you and F you. I got the effing right to tell you to F off and you effing. Look, how we fix this is we start acting with a little bit of sanity and common sense. I don't want my nephews to be pulled over and shot. I didn't want to get yanked up, pulled over, and shot at either. And I'm not black, but that's not the point. It's the violence we need to address. It's not the color of the skin. Are they being profiled? Yes. But I was being profiled. I know other people who are being I know some Mexicans who are being profiled. It's your behavior and where you pop your head up and what's going on or down or who you're hanging with. And they get to know you one way or the other. You just don't know. Well, they're watching me. If you pop up on somebody's radar and are seen enough times, even though you may not really be involved, they know who you are now. Not necessarily what you do, but they know who you are. And if you think in this day and age they don't know who you are, forget about it. You know what I mean? Chloe, hey, how are you? I can't read that. I'll put my glasses on in a minute. Hey, David Castle. So yes, let's protest, but let's do it right, folks. You know, and it's not being done right. It's being agitated. We know that. So then I'm saying, then don't protest, because you're going to be led in whatever way, shape, or form, and it could very well be some of this 4 or 5G crap. If they tried it in Ferguson years ago, you can bet now that they've got all these towers and things, they can direct some of this into neighborhoods, onto streets. And what's that going to do to people, whether you got nanobots in you or not? But to the point that it's the frequency is enough to, it makes you want to cringe. It makes you more irritable. It makes you whatever. And they've already proven it can be done and has been done, but can't prove that it is being done at the moment. But I would submit that in some of these neighborhoods, it's quite possible, because you see some folks just kind of walking around and just kind of, and I think they all should be singing old, Negro spirituals. And I mean that with respect, because white spirituals just don't sound the same. But, let's sing some good old Negroes and Negro. And I mean this with respect now. Those old hymns. I love singing them old hymns, and the clapping and the thingy. Man, you get a rhythm going, and it's, there you go. So you can say what Jesus or God or whatever in a thingy and a blah, 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 and you ain't really offending the cops. So, and it worked for Martin Luther King and some of them back in the day, and we shall overcome. And maybe that's the song we should be singing, because I thought that after all these years of him, Bobby Kennedy getting murdered really hit me hard. I mean, JFK, I was a little young, but Bobby Kennedy, I was almost old enough to vote. And, him being murdered was just, wow, along with MLK. But the idea, though, that we should take a violent recourse, is just not the answer. The power to the people and the black power and the fist and all that. And for the people who were doing it, they were like, right on, brother. To the people who were seeing it, it was like the Nazi sign. So you could, well, he's Black Panther. He's like right on and black. Yeah. And so because the Nazi sign symbols and the Sieg Heil and all that, the black fist. So these old folks, they took it as like, oh, here we go again. And was like, wait a minute. There's always 2 or 3 or 4 different sides to everything. So just because you see one thing don't mean that that's what everybody thinks. So like from my sister's point of view, my sons are half black. They are black men on the street. I'm afraid for them simply because of who they are and that they may get stopped and whatever. I agree with that. But again, it's not just them. So what should we do? Our protests can start online. But one of the first rules we should say is we don't talk about any individual. We talk about the system. The system is too violent. The system for a normal arrest. I watch some of these old cop shows and some of these Westerns. And they were like, all right, we got you. And the guy was like, okay, give me your gun. All right. Come on, Sheriff, take him down. They don't even handcuff the guy and they walk him off to jail. And they didn't have to do that to me. The GBI, when they arrested me, they did all that. And then the sheriff's department put me in the front seat of the car and drove me into town. And they like you're not going to run, are you? I was like, where am I going to go? You know where I live. They loosened my handcuffs. But to the GBI, which is like that's the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, they were going to like chain my feet together. And they were like, he's not going to run anywhere. He's got a bad leg, for God's sakes, chill. So once the GBI were out of the picture, the local sheriff's department unhandcuffed me and said, okay, go in the room in here. I'm like, I'm not going to run. I'm going to stay right here. You got me. But see, not everybody's like that. And of course, I understand that. But when they abuse it and it's still like Dirty Harry, yeah, do you feel lucky punk? Was that 3 shots or 4? Or is there 5? I can't even remember how many bullets this gun holds. But to the point, though, do we still have to have that? Do they still have to maintain that same thing? I say no. So we bring it out. You see that incident there? It's not about the person who's being injured. It's about the asshole that's doing the injuring. It's about the mentality of the police force, the prison systems. Oh my God, in the prison systems, they get away with a lot of stuff. Brutal. Oh man. But so that's what we should be concerned about. And that's where we should take our focus. Not about the color, not about most of the guys that are dying, though, folks, are men. But there's been a few women who have been restrained and whatever and have choked or had seizures or whatever. And it happens more than people realize because the people who get there, who stop them, and she had a seizure. Doesn't mean that he clubbed her. Maybe he kept her from doing something, or she had an obstruction and the officer didn't do anything, and the woman or the person died as a result of their negligence. So they like to cover that stuff up, like they, washed away the fact that my shoulder was dislocated. The people at the Southwestern said, "Hey, your shoulder is dislocated." My friend, who is a surgeon in the local area, said, "Who dislocated your shoulder, Dave?" I'm like, it was the sheriff's department. Why did you do that? Did you try to beat on him or something? You're not a violent person. I was like, you should have told that to them. But to the point, though, so there were people who knew that I would never start a fight with somebody. But at the same point, the higher muckety muck said, this person's dangerous. Get him out of our way. Assumed that because one person said it, who had an MD behind it, everybody else followed suit. So because one doctor didn't like me, said I was crazy, then everybody else said I was crazy. And if I said, what are you doing to me? Get me out of here. I'm not. They see there's his behavior. Oh, there he goes. He's hollering. You're dead. What are you locking me up for? There he goes. We got to shut him up. The more you protest, the more they will put you down and beat on you. That's what we need to stop, regardless of color. I know women who are my age, younger, 40s into their 60s, in the mental health department. We used to sit around and they go, I got picked up the other day and they put me in the thing, and this certain doctor in Thomasville, may she be dead by now, I'm sorry, but she was a wicked witch, sent a lot of people who she just didn't want to deal with, who had problems, out to Southwestern, locked them in a room, shackled them to the bed. I got out. They didn't know that I was a magician. They tied me to the bed, hands and feet, right? And I reached down with my hands and undid the knots because of the puppeteer and a practicing, sleight of hand thing over the years. I had by the time the nurse came back in to give me another shot to calm me down, I was sitting there out of my restraints, and they were sitting on the bed. And I said, I know this is probably going to surprise you. And she was like, nurse, he's out of his restraints. And I'm like, I'm not going to do anything. Back down. I'm calm. Here's your stuff. If you tie me back down, I'll just get out again. But. Yes, it really happened. You should have seen the look on that nurse's face. I'll never forget that. That was one of those most precious moments while looking at her go, when I wasn't tied to that with that gurney any longer. But, I didn't try to hurt any of them or anything like that, but they sure put a hurting on me. And that's what's wrong with the system. Archibald Hospital, one of my earliest videos, years ago, I did a video and I said, them folks down at Archibald covered it up. They injured me. They put me in the hospital. They had my medicines taken away because one doctor didn't like me and set this chain of events in motion. And they covered it up because they were under review for the Georgia and the United States, some kind of prestigious award for like good housekeeping for hospitals. And they put that shit under the carpet. And I tried to get a copy of the video that they said they had. They tried to get a this and a that. I tried to get doctor's reports, and it also I have copies now still, but there was a lot of stuff that I tried to get from the hospital, and they were like, "Well, you were just intoxicated." I'm sorry, but I haven't had a drink in years, especially back then with the meds I was taking. And I'm like, no, but they said you were intoxicated. They were wrong. What was wrong was I hadn't had my meds in 12 hours. And I was starting to crash on my meds, and they wouldn't give them to me. Well, but that's just hearsay. No, that's the truth. You all absconded of my drugs, put me in there, and didn't give me my meds, and left me in the emergency room, locked up, without a urinal, without any water, without any of my meds, without any food, and left me there. And then when I tried to say, wait a minute, aren't you not treating me right here? Then they tied me to the bed and gave me shots and said he's crazy to Southwestern because I was a bother. Now, that's the truth. Archibald Hospital in Thomasville. I swear to God, there's some really good people down there. There's some really good doctors, but I'm scared as shit of the people, a couple of, especially a female doctor, if she's still in the emergency room. I think I'd really take a swing at her. They would have to arrest me. Yeah. If she was still in the emergency room there as a doctor, I would take a swing at her because of what she did. And I'm not the only one. I found out when I was in the joint, of how many other people had been abused through her. Now, I don't know if she was getting a kickback because they would go through this one department and it would go over here, and then they would get referred to Southwestern, and Medicare and Medicaid was paying for some of this, and so it's like they wanted me to pay $9,000 for a 3-day stay at a hospital I didn't even want to go to. So you took me against my will, and now you want me to pay $9,000? That's what I think of that one. And I ain't paying it. Are you kidding? No. And the thing is they were like, well, we don't think that, your Medicare is going to cover this. Well, duh. But anyway, but it is about the violence. It's about the violence that was in there. Now, not as bad, but the thing is that if there are certain people, and if you see a behavior and this person starts to act up, you immediately don't. And I've been there. I've been on the other side where when I worked with the disabled and handicapped back in the 70s, we had a particular gentleman who around the full moon, he was on phenobarbital, and his levels would get a little freaky. And Mr. Wade, that's what we called him, Mr. Wade. I guess that was his first name. But anyway, he would get this look in his eyes, and he would beat the crap out of you before you knew it hit you. It'd be like, all right, calm down, Mr. Wade. Pow! And you were out, man. I mean, he cold cocked me. There was a 6'4" black man that was 300 pounds. a lot more muscle than fat. And Wade took him down. Wade was a little bit taller than me and not much more in weight, but Wade took him down. It took four of us to get this guy just to calm down. But the thing is, if you grab them, which is what we had to do, and when they grabbed me, I had the same reaction. I was like, let go of me. And I know exactly what I did to Wade all those years ago, simply by trying to keep him from beating the crap out of us and running out into traffic, literally, that we had to hold him. But in holding him, it made him resist even more, which is what I did at the hospital. When they first grabbed a hold of me, I was like, you don't have the right. I just want my medicine. I want something to drink. I want to go home. I'm hungry. And they grabbed me and said, you're going back in your room. And that's when I put up a fight. Four of them, and this little old 165-pound, string bean held them back. I didn't fight them, but I was just like, you ain't putting me back in that room. And they had trouble. That's when they tied me down. But it was the violence. But they're not supposed to do that. Protocol says they're not supposed to grab someone because of the reaction. Turn me loose. Well, then that puts everything into a violent state. Turn me loose. And that's what I did. And then these great big giant guys come up and grab me and started to manhandle me. And that pissed me off to no end. You have no right to touch me. But I was in the hospital. I was in the emergency room. And they thought I snuck out of my room, which I did. But all I wanted was my medicine. I wanted to go home. I was hungry. And when they shouldn't have grabbed me, but that set the motion even worse. So as soon as they grab someone, your immediate reaction is to jerk away. Now you're resisting arrest, when actually you're resisting being grabbed. It's not the arrest part. A lot of times people say, don't touch me, don't grab me. And I would warn someone the same thing. Don't grab me, son, don't grab me. That there was an incident coming back up from Florida last year. Young cop pulled us over because the tag was missing off the truck, even though I had it on the trailer anyway. But he pulls us over and he went to grab me and what are you doing? I'm like, you wanted my driver's license. It's in my pocket. Well, what are you reaching for? My driver's license. It's in my pocket. Do you have a knife? Yeah, but it's in this pocket. And it's a fold out thingy. And no, I'm not going to try to stab you. I'm old. You can beat the crap out of me. Do you want my license or not? And he went to grab my hand and I was like, don't grab me. I got issues. Don't grab me. I'll do whatever you ask me. Don't grab me. And so he was like, well, what do you mean? And I'm like, just asking. Don't grab me. If you need me to do something, I'll bend over. I'll do whatever you want. But just don't reach out and grab me, sir. Please. That's all I'm asking. I will comply. When I did, and he calmed down. It took 20 minutes for whatever they're doing. But anyway. But the thing is that it's their attitude. Everybody's a criminal. If they stop you, you're a criminal. Because they wouldn't have stopped you in their brain. So if you're protesting, you got to understand what the cops are thinking. In their brain, you're protesting against them. Not, well, the murderer of such and such. Yeah, but they know it's more than that. But instead of discussing the murder of, what about the violence every single day in city after city around the world? The violence of nonviolent people by violent police people or those people in charge. Let's stop that. It's much further, it's so much more ingrained than just Black Lives Matter. Now, do I have sympathy for my nephews? Yes. Do I have sympathy for my other friends who are half and half? I hate to say it, but they're not fully black. But That's the label that gets put on them. You're not white if you have black in you. You're black, period. Which is like, what? But now if I say I've got a bunch of Native American in me, they go, nah, you can't prove it. You're white. Well, wait a minute. I have 3 grandmothers on the same side of the family who are all Cherokee. Well, how do you say I don't have enough Indian blood? Not necessarily Cherokee. I'm not trying to claim membership or anything, but I ain't white. Not by your standards. But, you're not a card carrying Indian, so you can't be an Indian. And so, therefore, even though your lineage says, well, I've got a crap load of Indian in you, don't you? Yeah, well, now you're white. What? Because I look it. Okay, you go. That's it. That's how you gauge it, right? So these offspring are more tan than the rest of us. Their hair is curly. Whoops, that's a giveaway. Well, wait a minute. I know Spanish people with curly hair that have maybe a fifth or a sixth of some Haitian island stuff that came in through the Cuba, and but they're not black. They're more Hispanic. They're more Cuban. They're not black, but their skin and their hair, and you could mistake them, but they ain't. So, wait a minute. Now, where does that come in? So it's like, and the thing about on the census, what kind of Latino are you? What are you? Cuban Latino? Are you Mexican? Are you this? Are you that? Are you that? Are you this? Are you this? Are you that? Are you that? Are you this? Holy crap-a-moly. Well, wait a minute. Are you Asian American? Well, are you Manchurian? Or are you, this? Are you that? Are you from the Hunan province? Are you from Honolulu Chinese? Are you Chinese from Japan? Are you live in Hong Kong, or Singapore? So where does this thing rest and where does it go? But the bottom line, regardless of the race, is the people who think you're doing wrong, they can do what they want. Remember when some of them people it calmed down a little bit, but the thing at the airports with your shoes off, and some of them folks ain't cops, but they were like acting like it and grabbing people and forcing them off and doing this, and I'm like, whoa, hang on. Just because you have a security badge don't mean that you can be ugly to people. Whatever we should do, and the people who are in that position need to be stronger than anybody else in holding their composure. Now, if somebody gets too unruly, what's wrong with the trank gun? The Green Hornet had it back in the 30s. So trank somebody real quick, knock them out for 5 minutes with a little sort of boink. Okay. Or something that won't physically, bodily just tear somebody up, broken bones. And, my shoulder still ain't right. I'm still pissed about that. But there ain't nothing I can do. What am I going to do? Even if I got recompense, even if they gave me money for it, shoulder would still hurt. So, but let us protest for the right things. People to say, well, he really was a shyster and he deserved to get what he got. No, nobody deserves that. Let me put you down on the ground and put my knee on your head on the cement, and you tell me if that was necessary. That's all I'm asking. Put your face down there and you have it done to you, and tell me if you think that was necessary under any circumstances. Now, if the guy had murdered, if he had a gun in his hand, and you got to take him down, but once you got him handcuffed, there's no sense. You're handcuffed. Where are you going to go? You're handcuffed. But that's the difference. You see, they put more force and violence because they can, and no one tries to pull them back from it. It's encouraged amongst them. I've heard the sheriff. I used to work in Hillsborough County. When I was in the Hillsborough County Jail, the dining room officers would come and eat. And so I spent 3 months in the officers' dining room before I left prison. And you should have heard some of the stories. And I knew some of these sheriffs out on the street when I was before I got put in there. And one of them was even a graduate at my same class as me. And he was an officer. He was a sheriff's department a deputy. And so, but listening to these guys, you go, wait a minute. They're on the street talking about how they beat up this guy, how they, and listening to the guards who ate in the same cafeteria thing. They all talked about how they beat this guy up and on second floor, blah, blah, blah. And, bragging about it. And it's just like, so the violence is everywhere. It has nothing to do with color. That just pushes people over the edge. Yes, it should be considered, but let's talk about the violence. It's the violence that matters. Stop the violence regardless of color. Stop the violence regardless of color. That should be our motto. Stop the violence regardless of color. Any color, doesn't matter. Stop the violence. My friends, I love you. I do. I can't believe I've been chatting for over an hour and barely stopped running my mouth. But it is something that I have considered for a long time. And the things I've told you about being in the hospital, all of that is true. I hate to say it, and I hate to admit it, but Michelle, the Hegelian dielectric on steroids. Yep. Hi, Chloe. How are you? Coordinated drivers never go as planned. Too many chiefs, not enough Indians. Yep. Chloe, that's because they're trying to prepare everyone for a new world order, like everything has been happening to everyone. Yep. Man, but they're even profiling themselves, because I hear the ones that do want peace to say black skin. I keep telling them there's no color involved. It's all just skin. Yep, I absolutely agree with you. Yep, I love you too, Michelle. Thank you. It is a reflex when you pull away from somebody. So some of their actions are reflex, and the police need to understand that. But because they are in the power, because they're in control, or they wish control, it just gets out of hand. And there needs to be more training. If money was going to be spent, it wouldn't be on guns. It would be on training people how to deal with other people. Yes, you have to deal with violent crime. Yes, but not everybody's violent. And simply because, for example, I got a ticket for not having a flotation device in my kayak with the dog, right? I got to go pay a fine. Now, if I don't pay it on time, they're going to come get me. They're going to put a bench warrant out and send the sheriff out to my house to arrest me because I didn't wear a flotation device. Now, that's a little out of the, but they'll do it. So I've seen them do it. And it's like, you got to be kidding. Maybe I'm an old person. You can't send something in mail. No, they charge you $50 or $150. And then they put the bench warrant out, which costs more money. And then they send the sheriff out to say, you're under arrest because you didn't pay your fishing license fee thing. That the DNR, which ain't got nothing to do, but they can give you a ticket. They can shoot your ass if they want. I was in a canoe with my brother. We were going down the Flint River. The DNR pulls up and says, okay, empty your pockets. And we were like, what? Well, yeah, you're on the waterways. We can tell you what to do. We were like, what do you mean? And holy crap, I got this little bit of thing. We're smoking. And they just pulled out another long, 25 miles stretch of the river, nobody on it. We're the only people in a canoe. And the DNR guys just want to come up and want to bust us for a little bit of weed in the canoe. And they would have took us to jail. And they would have charged us with the felonies because we had marijuana on a Georgia river. And then because it's controlled by the state, and oh my God, we'd go to state court and that'd be that. Oh my God, it's so ridiculous. But it's because it's a law, they must do it. They can't turn a blind eye. Oh, they got to get their ticket quota in. So my friends, there are laws we don't even know exist. And there are people out there who want to enforce the dumbest ones. And if they have to beat you up to do it, so be it. Be careful out there. Should we protest? The answer is yes. Should we riot? Absolutely no. Because we're rioting against the wrong people. We're rioting against a system that is broken. You can't riot against a system. Burning the police department down, I could almost... I'm sorry, I've had some really bad raps with police, and it wasn't because I was giving them a hassle. And I might have seen a police department want to burn it down. Not injure anybody, but watch the building go. But I don't wish anybody bodily harm. But when you get beat up and thrown around in a jail cell and this cop doesn't even know who you are, he's a jailer, he throws you in and grabs you out, snatches you in and snatches you out for a parking ticket. But because you're in there, he can manhandle you. It ain't like, okay, come on, get in. No, it's get in there, boy. It's just not necessary. That has to change. And there's been enough of us arrested now and taken to jail. We should protest, and we should verbally tell these people, y'all stop that mess. We should talk to the sheriff's department. We should talk to the local police department. And if we do anything, we should protest that they start having more open dialogue with the people in the community, and that any violence will not be tolerated from the sheriff. It needs to come from the sheriff down. Now, the sheriff, he's threw a few people up against the car too. But was it necessary? That's the point. If they're here to protect and serve, then they should be the ones to show nonviolence. Wyatt Earp, as the story goes, he always shot to wound. He never wanted to kill a man. If there was any way that he could get away from shooting a guy, he would shoot him in the leg, shoot him in the foot, shoot him in the shoulder. But he just didn't think it was right for him as a sheriff or anybody to just shoot and kill a man, even though they pulled a gun on him and wanted to do him bodily harm. So it's like, so wait a minute. Maybe more people should be like Wyatt Earp. Maybe. Now, I'm not pulling a gun on anybody, so I should not expect to be shot. But I've had a gun pulled on me by cops that I'm like, dude, man, I got a little... This is my pocket knife, and this is what I carry around. I'm sorry, but you got a gun. This is not a fight. So, my friends, I love you. Michelle, thank you. Chloe, for all of your opinions. We need to spread this around and keep people from getting so riled up. My sister has every right to be worried about her kids, as my nephews. But at the same point, we do not need to promulgate and promote more agitation. We need to take this protest thing and put it where it needs to belong. It needs to be about the violence, regardless of color. Stop the violence, regardless of color, right? Okay, until next time, have a great weekend. This is Saturday morning at 2:36 Eastern Daylight Time. Chloe, Michelle, David Castlelight, probably gone. Maybe not. I think Jody was in here. Way back up. I thought now that their events of I can't breathe, will others use the phrase I can't breathe as a way to get cops into trouble even when resisting arrest. There are a lot of times when people say they can't breathe and they actually mean they can't breathe. Hi, oh, hi, David. Hi, Amanda. Yeah, be well and kind regards all around. Cosmic hugs, everybody. So hopefully you're not panicking over some of this stuff, but we just need to be more. I'm all for the protest. I am. I'm all for that. There are things we need to change. But until we can be calm about how we present it and how we state our case, if we go to the same level as these people, screaming and hollering and yelling and jumping up and down, not a one of them is going to listen to us. So we need to be calm about it, but we need to state our purpose. This type of violence, it needs to stop. This is 2020, and we're in the space age, in the age of Aquarius. This kind of stuff just isn't necessary. So I close with a prayer as always. I continue to pray that each and every day, each and every one of you will accept and receive the knowledge, the healing, the wisdom, and the blessings from the universe. Each and every day, I continue to pray that you, your relatives, all of your relations, past, present, and to come, will learn to accept and receive the knowledge, the healing, and the wisdom from the universe. And as the rule of three, I continue to pray that each and every one of you will accept and receive and continue to share the knowledge and the healing that you are learning each day from the universe. Be at peace, my friends. Let's share the peace with everybody. Let's share our opinion. Let's protest against it. But let's make sure we do it in a kind way. They may not hear us right away, but we need to keep it up. Until next time, be safe. Keep it between the ditches. Amanda, Michelle, David Castle, as always, I love you, man. And Chloe and anybody else that I missed. So cheers, everybody. Till next time. TTFN. Ta-ta for now from South Georgia. Ween, everybody. And thank you, Bob. It was a little choppy, but we love you still. So, amen, everybody.